Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hammer Talk. I have talked about it in our MTG hot takes. We've thrown some jabs at the grimdark universe. I really think it's time for us to sit down and talk about the final piece of the big triforce that is tabletop gaming. We've talked about RPGs in our D&D sessions. We've talked about TCGs and MTG hot takes, but nothing really quite takes the cake like Warhammer when it comes to tabletop play with good, vivid, and theatrical lore like Warhammer does, or 40K or AOS. There's a couple of other variants out there. I just don't remember them right now. I'm going to be honest. Today, I'm with Donnie, who's one of our mini Grimdark lords. He's also known as Korax in our Beyond the Witchlight campaign, if you've been following that. He's a fan of the Warhammer lore and has a wealth of knowledge to the universe. The only thing Donnie and I would like to preface to viewers is we do not know everything about Warhammer. There is a lot of content out there for lore. Like, people have hours and dedicated a ton of time to it. We are not that. We will go over some tabletop. However, we are not we do not know aggressively all the rules, right? We're the filthy casuals. And we're here to talk about just like a sprinkle of lore, a sprinkle of tabletop, and ultimately hot takes. Because that's what FIA Unplugged really is. It's just us giving hot takes.
That's right. Awesome intro. Thank you, Ariel.
Yeah. And with that being said, let's talk about a personality type I feel like Korax could really relate to. And that's the grumpy old men of the universe, screaming at children.
Find that rude.
Screaming at children of the 41st millennia to get off their lawns. At least that is my mental image of Necrons.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment of a Necron personality. They're just old men. Get off my lawn.
It's our universe. We're the oldest.
That is right.
Donnie, in your opinion, what are Necrons to the grimdark universe? Before we dive deep into lore, because we will do that. Give me like a very surface level. That isn't my version.
Exactly. So the Necron are, I mean, they're essentially space zombie robots, right? Like that's kind of the basic when you kind of look at them and you see them at face value. Now, when you delve a little bit deeper into the lore and the story of them, you learn that they're really the reclaimers of the universe. They were the first faction and one of the first species that really was a predominant force. They went through a whole bunch of turmoil, stuff that happened, which we'll delve into, and then they had to step out of the theater a bit. They had to take a long rest, kind of like us in D&D often.
Nap time. And, who doesn't like nap time?
Yeah, exactly. And while they were asleep and, kind of out of the picture, all these other races came into play, and now they're returning, ready to take back what is ultimately theirs.
And then you and I, we picked this one first because we both have Necron armies, right?
That's right.
What drew you into this faction as like an interest of yours? Again, without giving a whole lot of spoilers, just like why Necrons?
I'll give you, so as anybody who's been watching D&D knows, I'm a bit of an edgelord. I'm the Virgil character. I like the dark and broody kind of characters, which honestly, there's tons of those in 40K. But I mean, the Necron, when I first saw them, I'm like, these are these dark, ominous, just unstoppable force.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was super cool. So I was all about it. So they really just drew me in because they were just super cool, super edgy. They were super powerful. I was all about it.
Yeah, don't let the memes fool you on the screen. This is not Necrons.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning, without getting heavy into lore, once again, because, we're trying to keep this pretty short, just like we do our MTGs. Can you give me a brief, as if I was someone getting into Warhammer and you really wanted to sway me into the Necron superior army, give me a little bit of background. The way that I described Necrons in the beginning was, think Egyptian origin, and that being with the Necron tier.
Sure. So well before where the current story is at, about 60 million years beforehand, you have the Necron tier, and the old ones. There's really only two main powers in the galaxy. The Necron tier, the planet that they were born on and that they originated from, was bombarded by radiation from their star,
Hmm.
and it put them into a state where they would get radiation sickness and cancers, and they would die at very young ages, usually in their 30s to 40s.
Hmm.
And in fact, their entire culture was wrapped around death. They eventually move off their planet, but they find out that even when they've escaped, their genetics are so damaged that they can never escape this curse that they have. They ask the old ones for help. The old ones refuse them, because the old ones are immortal. They've discovered the key to living forever.
Right.
The Necron tier don't take this very well, go to war, get their butts kicked by the old ones, and they make a deal with these star gods, these old gods called the Catan.
Hmm.
And the Catan say, "Hey, we'll make you immortal, but there's a little bit of a cost to it. You have to go through this thing called biotransference." Um, Many of the Necron were all about it. They wanted out of their mortal shells. There were a few that did not, but in the end, they all ended up having it, where they go into these big bio furnaces. They are turned into these living metal robots.
Right.
All their pain goes away. They become immortal. But in doing so, as they went through, they lost their souls. And the Catan had tricked them into this because they wanted to feed on their souls. And so
Hmm.
the Catan gets super, super powerful. And then, yeah, eventually they defeat the old ones with the Catan. After doing so, the Necron are so powerful that they turn their back, or they actually betray the Catan,
Hmm.
um, destroying the Catan, or essentially they shatter them into shards because they
Right.
can't actually kill them.
Right.
Which is one of the most epic things, because they shatter them and then they use them as big batteries.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They shatter their gods, and then they're like, "Yeah, now we're going to use you to power all of our machinery."
Right.
Um, but then afterwards, they go and they're so damaged that they have to, from the fight, that they have to go and take their big nap.
Right.
And but yeah, they were so powerful compared to anything that, the modern day, like the Imperium, or
Hmm.
them, like that's the reason why you're playing these guys, is because they are the most badass. It's
Right.
just that in the 41st millennium, they're all still waking up. They're still kind of groggy,
They're
you
EB.
know. Exactly, they're in their EP mode right now, and but once they get out of their EP mode, there's no stopping them.
Oh, 100%. So what I found for you, needless to say, when I looked up Necron images, a lot are from other videos that people would know if they watched lore. Do you like our Necron tier that's pre RoboCop mode? While
Yeah.
he was still fleshy, I thought this
Yeah.
was very fitting.
Yeah, they're so icky looking. Like
It is
it's
nightmare fuel in a way.
exactly. And you can definitely tell, like, if you had to choose between that, or like being an actual, like, super powerful
Right.
immortal robot god, I mean, what are you going to choose,
I mean,
honestly?
I would say that maybe I would be okay with the receding hairline. This guy just has no hairline.
No, no, they got to put those big metal the crowns on, to like imitate like they have hair.
Uh-huh. So in all of that lore, and I'll probably try and prompt you into a more in-depth kind of thing of it. What for just the Necron tier, right? Let's say pre-Catan, what part of that lore stands out the most to you and why? Like when you heard about that background, I know for me some of the things that were really impactful. What was one of the ones for you?
For the kind of the pre-Catan, pre-biotransference, I think one of the things that sticks out most to me is that it's, even though these are these super old aliens and whatnot, they still have a lot of the same problems that all the other races
Hmm.
do, humans included. Back beforehand, there was a lot of infighting, there was civil wars, there was all the different dynasties,
Yeah,
and they would go to war with each other. And what is the one thing that can unite any group of enemies? A
a
common
common
foe.
enemy. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's I think that was one of the big impacts to me,
Hmm.
was that when the old ones refused to give them immortality, all of a sudden all the Necrontyr are on one side again.
Right.
And it's just like, cool, now we can stop fighting each other, and we can go after these guys who have turned their back on us.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is like when you first get into 40K, right, and you hear about the Necrons and you don't hear about the Necron tier, you just hear exactly what you premised, right, which was zombie robots. But when you hear about the Necron tier, it's almost like listening to a struggle, right? It was their planet was somewhere off where it was getting hit with like supernovas. They were dying of cancer. They were basically trying to do a space race to get off their planet, and then when they do, they find the elders and they're like, oh my God, you could fix all of our problems, right? Because we're still dying on these planets, even though we're further away from our home one, just because the amount of radiation and shit that they were like subject to.
Yeah.
And the elder ones were just like, yeah, we're busy like
No.
creating other civilizations. You guys figure it out. We don't really like playing God, but you know, they were kind of playing God. And the Necrons was
Yeah.
like, fuck you.
Exactly. Exactly. And what's with whenever you deal with Warhammer lore, there's always the issue of like, okay, well, it was 60 million years back, and
Mm-hmm.
this story is usually being told in the modern day thing. So imagine like trying to tell a story that's 60 million years back.
Right.
There's a ton of inconsistencies. So like no one's really sure like, well, why did the old ones turn not give them immortality or not show them this? Did they know that the Necron tier, were these warlike groups? Like there's not really a lot of
Not,
answers.
no. The elder ones are just assholes. Okay, my Necrons did
Okay, okay.
nothing
No,
wrong.
yeah, the Necrons did nothing wrong. Nothing at all.
So now let's talk about the Catan because they're very
Sure.
cool. I actually
Yes.
this is my favorite slide in our whole entire one,
That's
and you've
so
already
good.
talked. You've
I
already talked
love
about
it.
it.
I love it.
So it wouldn't be the grimdark universe if there wasn't some good old fashioned backstabbing. And the
Yeah.
Catan, or the croutons that I like to call them, it really was a one thing backstabbed another, like, right, the Catan backstabbed the Necrons, and then the Necrons are like, what if we backstab you back?
Yep. Exactly.
And before I ask you questions, because we did kind of talk about this, and I will do my small mini flex. So
Oh yeah.
you were
Let's see it.
you were correct in the Catan basically saw the Necrons. The thing about the Catan was, right, is they didn't like the Eldars because the Eldars were playing God, and the Catans were Star Eaters, and they were like, ooh, you know what? What if we gave Necrons immortality, or the Necron tier, right? And they will go defeat our foe, right? Because we can't be bothered with all that. We're busy doing star god shit. And so they're like, we'll put you in this furnace, right? And you'll become like this cool immortal. And then, like you said, right, when individuals went into the furnace, they were transformed into basically Necrons, right? The robos. And not
Yep.
only were their pain taken away, basically almost their whole entire personality, depending on the level of like
Yep.
what's the word,
Like nobility
nobility,
or
yeah, like,
status.
yeah. And so that way, like, if you were a nobody, you came out literally like clean slate.
Yep.
And as these people are going through, right, it's just these yummy little meals for the Catan. And then so the Necrons went off to go do the thing, right? They took out the elders, and the Catans were like, yes, you did everything for us. And they're like, yeah, but BT dubs. And that's where you go into, right? They come back and they clap at the Catan.
Exactly.
Just wanted to add that little information in there,
Yep.
that little
That's
nugget,
right.
because
Dude, there you go.
it's very important to understand it was not just the Catan that backstabbed the Necrons, but the Necrons clapped back.
Well, and what's another kind of interesting topic on that is that when the Necron tier became Necron, actually became their robotic forms and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
the Catan inputted into them I think it's a
A
command protocol.
protocol. Yep.
Yep. And so Zarek, or the Silent King,
Mm-hmm.
could just control everybody.
Yep.
Like he could control everyone. And so ultimately, it was Zarek who was the one who was like like he was the actual betrayer.
Yeah.
He's the one who was like, "Yo, I can't believe I let this happen to my people." But the Catan were so powerful at that time, he couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
And so he had to wait until the war with the old ones was complete, where like the Catan at this point had been weakened from the fight, and also they'd become so power hungry that they were eating each other pretty much.
Right.
So there was just a few left, and then he just was like, you know what, screw these guys. Let's make these insane god weapons and kill the Catan. I love it.
Let's do a hot take moment. And
Let's hear
it
it.
can be lore or it can be not.
It's FIA unplugged. There has to be a hot take, right?
Do you think the Catan ultimately harmed the Necron race?
Um, do I think they could have ever? I don't know. Like they were already really advanced, so I can't like
Mhm.
say if they ever could have solved their own, like mortality problem.
Right.
So in the end, like the Catan held up their end of the bargain, right? Like
Hmm.
they took away all their pain, they took away all their like, they became immortal.
Yeah.
So in that sense, no. But at the same time, they also ate their souls. And that's kind of a big deal, right? That's kind of
Double
a,
standards.
yeah, like maybe that's a red flag in a relationship. Like, I'll take away your pain, but I'm gonna eat your soul.
You
Like,
told me that wasn't something you were looking for in your marriage. Shame
yeah,
that.
I know how it works. but but yeah, and so what do I think that they did harm? Of course,
Mhm.
like they lost their souls, and while there's talk of them trying to undo biotransference, the Silent King is all about it.
Yeah.
Like they're ultimately their souls are gone.
Yeah.
Like they can't really get those back, and so I don't think that there's any undoing the damage that's already done. So yeah, I
Mhm.
would say the Catan definitely were bad in the end.
And then I want to talk about the Catan, not just on a lore level, because these are some very powerful units in the tabletop.
Yes, they are.
These are some really
Oh,
cool ones.
look
Look
at
at
them.
these
They're so
beautiful
good.
things.
They're so good looking.
And because these are quite beautiful, I don't know about you, but I may or may not have a few of these on my Christmas list.
Yeah, I most definitely do.
what what Catan? And I don't know because you have a much larger army at your disposal than I do, right? You kind of like you were the god emperor smiled upon you and just dropped a heavenly load of Necrons in your lap. Meanwhile, I'm like, hey, Games Workshop, would you like to put me into
Please.
crippling debt? And we'll talk
Please.
about that later too. Which one of these would you like to see, or do you have in your list? It doesn't matter the
Yeah.
points. Just do you have one of these in your list?
Okay, so like if I have to have any of the Catan, one, I want all the Catan,
Sure.
obviously. Like
But that's a lot
there's
of
no thing.
points.
I know. But I mean, but when they come on the field, what are you going to do?
Right.
But if I had to choose one of them, right?
Mhm.
I mean there's only one option. Like look at the Void Dragon.
He is very
Look at
cool.
the Void Dragon, dude. The wings, the
Yeah.
crown, the lightning coming down underneath him. I mean, dang, that tail. What does that tail do, I wonder?
What that
Um
PP
be-
do though?
yeah,
Oh, Kendall, sorry.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, the Nightbringer's sick. Obviously,
Yes.
he looks super cool. I'm not about the Deceiver. I'm not about him. He looks like a chump. And then the Katana Unleashed looks really cool too. It's got the cool like ethereal look. But
Mhm.
man, that Void Dragon,
Is
so
really
clean,
cool.
so clean.
So for anybody that does not know what these models are, the Nightbringer is the guy with the scythe. The Void Dragon, needless to see, is the guy with the cool electricity. The Deceiver is like a crucial part in the lore because he was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be like the Catan that the Necron tier talked to.
Yeah, he's the one who convinced them to do biotransference.
Yeah, other than that, I actually really don't look at his stats. I'm not entirely sure if he's super great. And then the last one was what you knew his name. I
His
never
name it's
remember.
just called the Catan Unleashed, I believe,
And
something like that. He doesn't even really have a name.
he gets played a lot if you guys go watch 40K in 40 minutes, which I highly suggest you do. It is very, very cool.
Yeah, it's
The Necron player plays this one a lot. I actually, my hot take, I like the Nightbringer.
oh, dude, I know.
I like the Edgelord. I also really like his abilities. I've watched a couple of 40K in 40 minutes with him, and I was like, damn, that's kind of cool. And I've seen some sick paint jobs on that guy.
Yeah. Just a spoiler alert, this is going to be Korax in like
I
8 levels. This right here, that's
don't
going to be him.
I don't think the Nightbringer started off as a ranger.
You don't know what he started off as.
But do he
I
have
don't
that
know.
6-pack though? 8-pack? How many abs does that guy have?
Too many, dude. Too many.
And then so the Void Dragon does look really cool, and we kind of talked about that. Is it because he looks cool, or is it because he has good abilities in tabletop?
Yeah, so since I don't have him, so I can't speak a ton to his abilities, but
Mm-hmm.
when I have done research into some of the units I have
Yeah.
and some of the like how they play with other units
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, I have seen the Void Dragon is pretty powerful. He's got like this I think it's like this aura of madness, I believe is one of his abilities. He has like
I think
these
so.
different multi attacks. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's got a ton of abilities. But for me, it's just styling, dude. It's
Sure.
like when you're rolling in and you style on your opponent,
Oh, 100%.
even if you lose the game, you won in the end.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of style or silent, let's talk about the Silent King. I'm gonna pause for a moment. Please enjoy
Sure.
the what we were calling is the motivational posters of this video. Um, he is the reason why Necrons have daddy issues. Silent King left for milk for millennia. He may or may not come back. Depending on what lore video you watch, he will not come back or he will come back.
Yeah.
This is how I always describe the Silent King is he is why people have daddy issues.
Yep. That's
Um
fair. That's
again,
fair.
I don't want to go heavy into lore because we have a lot to cover in this video and we have covered a lot so far. Blanket statement about the Silent King. He's a big role in the Necron lore, which you had discussed. With the talk about the Silent King returning, do you think he is power hungry or do you think he feels guilt for having basically, like we talked about, right? That protocol was enlisted in him. He basically shoved, either told people to go through the biotransfer or literally dragged people through it. And then he got to control everything, right? No one could
Yeah.
say no to him. So is he coming back because he's power hungry, right? He wants a seat on the mantle now that the tomb worlds are awakening, or is it guilt?
I think I think it is a I think he's looking for a chance at redemption,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in some of the background lore for Zarek, the Silent King, is that so he sends all the Necron to sleep,
Right.
and once he does so, he releases the command protocol.
Yep.
So at this point, Necron have free will.
Mm-hmm.
He while they're asleep, he goes like outside of the galaxy,
Yeah.
and it's not like no one's really sure what he did out there, but apparently
He went out for
he
milk.
he went out for milk and cigarettes. Oops. um but no, he did something out there where apparently he claimed some grand prize for the Necron.
Oh.
He conquered stuff. Again,
Mm-hmm.
it's like really unclear, but there's supposed to be like some paradise or something out there waiting for the Necron for when they reclaim the galaxy and then they can reap the rewards. And then what does he see on the outskirts of the galaxy as he's waiting? He sees the Tyranid swarm coming in. He sees
Right.
all the Tyranids rolling in, and he's like, "Holy crap! Like these things could ruin any chance of
Mm-hmm.
us reclaiming the galaxy. And also, if they eat all of
There could
the
be no
biomass,
galaxy.
exactly." And then he rolls in. He's like, "Holy crap! Now chaos is out of control."
Mm-hmm.
And all of these stupid human things and the Eldar thing, these little
Really an
space elves.
annoyance.
Exactly. And so he came in to like pretty much, I think, he's like coming back and say, "Hey guys, look at what I did while you guys were asleep. Don't be mad. Like I got something great for you." And so yeah, I think that's where a lot of his motivation is
Mhm.
like a chance of redemption, that he did all this, but hey, look, I did something good while you were waiting.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it too. And it makes, I honestly really like that take of the Silent King because he was powerful. He got those protocols. And then to watch what happened to his people, granted, he got them immortality. But could you imagine being an overlord and watching your subjects go through something and then just lose all humanity? And
Yeah.
to watch like that nobody walk through and then just be basically a walking hunk of metal that will do anything you tell it. While when he is the Silent King, right, he goes through and he remembers everything that he did. They talk about how some Necrons that were so high up in the courts and so smart that they would walk out having like multiple personalities. They could do quantum physics 10 times over before you could even think twice about like what you ate for breakfast.
That's such a good analogy. I'm thinking about cereal and and Zarek is here calculating the circumference of the sun.
I was gonna say, and we'll talk about that because I think it's in this next slide. Let's check it out because that was my question here. Oh, it is
Oh God.
the infinite and the divine.
Oh, God, the infinite and the divine.
Because you showed me this, I will be honest, I have not finished reading this. It's got first off, I love both of the characters. However, who's the smart one? The one that is like this crazy star nut.
And then there's Oricon? Acheron, I think is the other one.
Sure. This man at one point in the book goes to meditate, and I swear to God, because I was listening to an audiobook, I zoned out, tuned in, zoned out again, tuned in. We went through that process about 5 times while he's talking about a meditative state that he's having, going over the possibilities of the universe and how he's going to obtain his big master plan. I'm like, bro, I have literally had an out-of-body experience 5 times over that equated to nothing, and this man's still having one. I am sub-life form at this moment. This guy was like peak.
Yeah. And interesting point on this, Oricon, again, I believe that's his name. I apologize if it's wrong.
That's fine.
But the other dude, he was actually one of the few people on the Silent King's court who he was like a diviner, and he's like, yo, this biotransference thing is a bad idea. Was like all against it, and ultimately he got ignored and people did it anyway. Right. But Oricon's like one of the few people who realized, hey, the Catan are screwing us over.
Right. And not to spoil the book, but I mean, he is one of the things that's like, we could become star gods. And he kind of goes into like a whole sort of galaxy nutcase
He goes
thing.
down a crazy road. Yeah, he goes down a crazy road.
Right.
If you guys haven't read it, it's an excellent book. It is.
Yeah.
It's a little slow because the Necrons are not in a hurry, but it's great.
Yeah, I actually ended up stopping like midway when it was picking up. I was like, ooh, shame that. So I need to pick this back up. But this part of the segment I am calling where they are now. Donnie, nap time's over, right?
Nap time is over. We are waking up.
These awakening I don't remember, I think it was protocols or reanimating protocols or whatever, right? They start going off, and there's actually a big problem with this because the Necrons were supposed to still be asleep, and with the early awakenings there is becoming some major problems.
Yeah. And I mean, the awakening itself just was a really messy endeavor. You had some dynasties that were waking up really early. There's some that are still sleeping. There's some that failed to wake up at all, and like the tomb world just died. There's all kinds of different stuff that have happened. And then there was also this kind of strange thing where a lot of them, or not a lot, but some of the Necron like were damaged from the being asleep for so long. And kind of like you brought up earlier, where a lot of the like kind of pleb citizen versions lost all their personality. It became even worse when they woke up after 60 million years of sleeping. So yes, it's definitely not the clean process that the Silent King was hoping for.
Oh, 100%. And then I do want to talk about them because we kind of touched on them. Tomb Worlds are fucking cool. Tomb Worlds is basically like the reason why I think of Egyptian, right, is Tomb Worlds is basically just that, right? It is a location that all these Necrons are sleeping in when they went night time by the Silent King, and then they're just giant. I mean, I don't know how else to describe them besides literally like pyramids almost, like
underground pyramids
that are being maintained by little scarab robo beetles.
And in lieu of that, I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine being some like human miner
archaeologist.
Archaeologist who's like just drilling into the thing, cracks open one of these things, and just like millions of these scarabs come pouring out in defense of their tomb world. You're just like, holy shit, what did we just do? What did we just awaken? Can you imagine how scary that would be?
I think they actually not quite to that tune. I don't remember what it was that I was either listening to or reading or something like that, but they actually make that analogy. There's just like a short about something like that, and they said it was terrifying, right? Because that is all the scarab's jobs, is to maintain the tomb world and ward off anything that comes into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. If you had to choose a Necron dynasty to align with, which whoever doesn't know the dynasties, if you happen to pick up Necrons, they do show the dynasties in the Codex. So I'm going to dive into your Codex remembering. Which would you choose?
You know, I'd probably have to go with the Sawtek dynasty. Sawtek being the one that is under kind of the direct command of Emotech, the Stormlord. Emotech is one of my favorite Necron characters. He's just an absolute badass.
Yeah.
He really comes in and just like starts uniting everybody by one, martial law and military command, but also through like showing honor and like just an understanding of the ways that a leader behaves. And so, yeah, I'd honestly have to choose a Sawtek. I think like Emotech serving under that dude, you got a really good head on his shoulders.
Right. And they talked about before that he was like a warlord in his previous life. So that's why he is so good at all of his tactics. And I might have my lore mixed up. There was conversations how when the courts were starting to awaken, there was this guy that basically awoke in first. And he's like, I'm going to be appointed the new head king. And so he wakes up. Wakes up the Stormlord and is basically like, you're going to vouch for me. And the Stormlord's like, I don't know who you are. Nah, dog.
And it's over.
He is the kind of person where he is trying to, in his own weird way, unite the other dynasties, right? It's basically either when he's going through and he finds your dynasties, because there is still conflict between the dynasties, even though they are, they're Necrons now, they're fighting other things in the world. But regardless, I mean, rights are rights. They're still power hungry. And basically he finds these other dynasties and it's either you join my dynasty or I will take you out. You have an option.
Yep. But like I said, what's nice though is that he'll roll in and do that. Like he's not just like, he doesn't just roll in and just like oppress them instantly.
Right.
He rolls in, he's like, hey, my army's really big. I got my shit together. Do you want to join? Because if you don't join, I'm going to make you join. But I would like to do this reasonably. And he's even a pro of like the single like one-on-one combat kind of stuff rather than like wiping out the whole army.
Yeah.
So like I said, he's just awesome. I love the Stormlord.
Now, Necrons are known for their interesting and terrifying technology. Which piece of Necron technology do you find the most interesting?
Honestly, and I know this might be kind of cheating, but I actually think some of the most interesting pieces of technology are the ones that aren't around anymore.
Yeah.
During the War in Heaven, which is the war when the Catan and everything were fighting the old ones with the Necrons. I mean, they made weapons that just were they were just unimaginably powerful. Like where the weapons are so powerful that they broke causality, like cause and effect. And you think like, well, what does that mean? I have no idea. And that's the whole point. Like, and then after the Silent King was like, okay, we're all gonna go to bed now. He started breaking down these weapons because he's like, these are so nightmarishly powerful that we can't let any other races even pretend to tinker with them.
Right.
And we shouldn't have these anymore.
Right.
And so I think for me, it's actually the technology that isn't around. I mean, obviously the orrery is really cool. But I think for me, it's just the stuff that was so terrifyingly powerful that they couldn't have it anymore.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, the orrery is that giant galaxy star map, correct?
Yes, I believe that is the name for it, was the orrery.
Yeah.
Or something of that sort.
And then the way that the map works is basically it is a large, basically in real time map of everything in the galaxy. And like they used to do what? They would like pick a star or something like that on the map. And it would literally like implode or snuff it out. Yeah.
Yep.
It was wild, the technology that they had.
Yep.
And
it's so
terrifying.
powerful that the dynasty that owns it refuses to let anybody use it because they're like, yo, this is the kind of stuff that can like offset the balance of reality. We can't just let anybody use this.
Yeah, for sure. And then Necrons are also rich in character. And again, I'm going to go back to the infinite and the divine because I have a feeling I know who is the most interesting character to you for Necrons? And if you don't pick Tezzeret, you're wrong.
I'd have to. It's got to be Traz in the Infinite.
Oh,
Like
that's right, Trazyn. Sorry.
he's fantastic, and not just because I mean, like his obviously his personality is great. He's very
Yeah.
quirky. He's just a very interesting character. But you get, especially in the 40k universe, you get a lot of dogmatism where
Yeah.
characters who are just like, I am for the Emperor only, blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
and like orcs that are just out for a good romping,
Mm-hmm.
like. But Trazyn, I mean, during the Battle of Cadia, Trazyn was there
Right.
helping the
Yeah.
Imperium because he's like, yo, like we don't really want chaos to get so out of hand,
Right.
um and so Trazyn's just, while yes, he's obviously out for the Necron and for their agenda, he isn't above interacting with other races and
Right.
such, as long as he's accomplishing his goal, which is getting new set pieces he can put
Collecting.
in his little museum.
Yeah, I loved the Infinite and the Divine. The only things that really like held my attention during the Infinite to Divine, it's an interaction that they're having. Right, they're at his collection. So basically, for people that don't know much about him, the meme is he's the Pokemon collector of the Warhammer world, and he has these giant, magnificent displays throughout his like little, basically like planet of his own, and frick, I'm gonna hate myself later for not remembering the names. Basically, the Star Geek comes in and is like, I want your thing. I'm gonna cause a distraction. And basically, he makes a whole entire display active again, and it's with like orcs and something else. And then so orcs are doing orc things, and then while this is happening, it's two old men Necrons fighting each other. Trazyn is like, oh my god, all of my nice precious things, right? His baubles, his doohickeys, his whatever. He's trying to maintain the orcs. He's stealing something. The other guy's stealing something. I think it's like one of the components to figure out.
Yeah, it's something.
It's something. Anyways, regardless, the guy's stealing something, right? And this guy, this star crazy dude, is like, what if cat mode and just keep knocking displays over
just starts breaking things,
and Traz is just like, what is happening right now?
Meltdown. He's like, you barbarian.
Uh-huh.
He's like having a full meltdown over him just breaking his toys.
I am very disappointed I don't remember their names, but I really loved that scene because it painted such a beautiful thing, and I felt for Trazyn so hard. It's like, could you imagine like the kids breaking something, the teens are like blowing something up, and you're like, I can't have nice things. I cannot have nice things.
I think just as a quick little tangent on that, I think one of the funniest lines was when Trazyn and him are fighting, and he like ruminates to him. He's like thinking to himself while he's fighting about how funny this would look or how ridiculous it would look if they were back in their old flesh forms, because they would just be two like gloppy old men pretty much whapping each other, but because they're in these like super powerful robot forms, they're like, it's a really fierce fight.
Oh yeah.
But Trazyn just is like ruminating. He's like, this would look ridiculous if we were back in our normal forms.
I love I forgot what his name is, and you might remember. It's a 40k lore guy. He clips in the Family Guy episode where it's like the two old men, the US vet and like the SS officer, like slowly fighting with each other. I think I sent you that clip. Very pretty much like right in tune with each other.
Exactly, 100%.
Let's talk tabletop. We're getting we totally sidetracked.
I know.
let's talk tabletop. I would like to talk about the little man in the corner, the actual representation of my wallet in this segment, because it is very, very true.
Yep. Always scared.
Warhammer is expensive, but it's a fun hobby, and there's plenty. At least for us, we have a local shop that does like secondhand Warhammer, so it makes it a little bit more budget friendly and stuff like that. You and I both run this faction. And we've been talking a lot of lore, and in typical FIA fashion, I'm going to try and whip through these as quick as possible. We're going to do hot takes.
Boom, 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 boom.
Which unit, either in tabletop or lore, do you think is the most badass?
I think almost all of the Necron guys look super cool. They have some incredible looking vehicles, but I think for me, it's got to be the Lich Guard. They're just like these. They got these big shields. You can have them with the spears or swords. I think they just got that cool Spartan look to them. Lich Guard, awesome looking.
I was gonna say the Lich Guard is actually this guy right here. He made the picture cut.
100%.
Let's see. What type of army do you like playing Necrons against? Basically, someone deploys them on the table, and you're like, "Yeah, I got this."
Perfect. So Necron, if you're getting into the dynamics a little bit of Necron playstyle, they do very, very well on medium to long range. They're
Hmm.
very, very good for like ranged things. So if you're playing against anybody who's trying to beat you in a ranged game, you're probably gonna win
Yeah,
because you usually can just outlast them. Even if they're doing more damage to you, the reanimation protocol and everything,
it's
like
very
it's just gonna
nice.
it's just gonna keep you going. And every time they die, they do less damage while you're regenerating your units. Um, the only thing you got to be kind of mindful of is just with close range. If you're not running, like I was saying, if like the Lich Guard or Flayed ones, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would say like Militarum, you're gonna kick butt. The oh my god, I can't recall what they're called, but they're like the a treaty. I don't remember. But anybody who's trying to run that like range game,
Sure.
you're gonna have you're gonna probably do pretty well against.
Minus like the Tau, but the Tau are known for range.
Yeah, exactly. The tower hit pretty hard at a long range.
Yeah, I realized while I build mine because I built for cool. I was trying to run the beat 'em up boys, and I either need to do a lot more flayed ones, a lot more like death cult stuff like that. It's possible. It's really rough, and I'm gonna be honest. I posted in the middle picture. It is the box for the combat patrol. I
Yeah,
really love the giant walker. I call him my
Pod
Rob the Salt
Walker. Yeah,
powered robot. He is a menace on the board. So it's
yes.
really hard to give him up.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those units where, again, if you can keep the opponent
Hmm.
at a little bit of distance, you can just hammer
Oh
them,
yeah.
like just hammer them down. And so, yeah, it can be very hard to deal with.
What type of army do you dislike playing against? Basically, we're supposed to be the broken thing on the
Yeah,
table. And then sometimes someone puts a unit down, you go, oh, shit. I hope my
for
rolls are good.
for me, it's got to be Tyranids. Like the
Tyranids?
Tyranids are just such a menace for you to fight with them
Hmm.
because I just, in my opinion, unless the large unit can do some like big AOE effects,
Right.
but your normal guys are just gonna have trouble dealing with big swarms.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, the issue is they'll get on top of you,
Hmm.
and once they like swarm you and like get all their units all over you, it can just be very difficult to manage.
Yeah, there was a couple games that I played where Tyranids had like shadow walks and stuff like that. That was really, really hard to deal with. Like you said, I mean, for
Hmm.
the most part, and depending on the build that a Tyranid player is doing, it's either you're playing with a lot of chumps or you're
Yep.
playing with some really, really aggressive swarm abilities where they're coming in
Yeah.
off your back line and stuff. And it's just, it is not a fun time.
Yeah. I just, I'm not gonna lie. I genuinely just don't really enjoy playing against Tyranids, no matter
Sure.
what I'm doing. But because, like I said, they can just be a nightmare, and players who play them love to just get them all over you.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I'd say that would be my least favorite ones to go against.
My last two games, because it's been a while since I played, but my
Yeah,
last two games, one was against like a really good Tyranid setup and that had like that stalker like movement,
yeah.
and then Custodes. So my last two games have been
Oh
ass.
God, yeah, Custodes, dude.
It was a really
Custodes
good
can be so
learning.
broken.
It was a good learning experience because I played with someone
Yeah,
that I was very confident in like learning things from. But they're like, I'm gonna play Custodes. I was like, okay, great. um,
yeah.
what paint scheme uh is your army? I did want to ask that.
Sure. So my Necron, I'm running kind of like a dark gray with their lighting effect
Hmm.
being like a reddish orange. So I had to go with the like again. It's just it was like, what's the edgiest color
Right.
scheme I could do? Black and red. Let's do it. So yeah, it's got to be that. I
Have
got
they
that really
been
nice glow effect.
have they been aggressively dipped in null oil?
I I actually try to stay away from null oil a little bit if I can because I like my colors to be a little bit more poppy. But for the I will say like highlighting is super important when you're working with like black
Yeah.
and with dark colors. So getting those good highlights underneath. Otherwise, you just have these matte black finishes. And while they look fine, I think that you'll give a lot more character to your units if you do some highlighting.
Oh, the minute I get a base coat on my freaking Necron, I'm like, into the oil with you. It's like getting dropped into a vat like I'm a Bond villain.
Yeah, like I said, with black, it just doesn't pop as well for the Nuln Oil.
For sure. And then, is there a paint scheme that you've seen that you think is just like the coolest thing this side of the Tomb World?
Oh gosh. Yeah, man, when you see people who do like professional grade painting,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just like leagues different than like your normal person you just kind
Right.
of run into who's doing it. I've seen some really gorgeous, and I know it's just kind of basic, but they did like almost like a bone color, like
Oh.
bone white and bone, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like bone wraith,
Yeah.
wraith bone. And they just did like the classic green, but like they
Mm-hmm.
did such a good job with the glowing effect that it creates that effect where it looks like it's actually like glowing across the whole unit. It just looked beautiful. So I think just some clean colors on there, and then they'll usually use some like decaying effect for
Yeah.
that because of how old they are.
Right.
That they can make them look just awesome.
I actually saw again last time that I was at Games Workshop and they were playing a set. Somebody did a like cool vaporwave sort of look where it was like black and then big pops of like magenta and a really
Oh
deep
hell
blue,
yeah,
and then they did like
hell yeah.
techno colored grass and stuff. It was very cool, and then
Mm-hmm.
they did like big pops of like bright pink to make them glow and stuff. It was so like outside of the normal Necron wheelhouse. It was really cool. I
That's
I
awesome.
I stared at those Necron units for a grip, and I was like, maybe I'll repaint mine.
If the player who has that is listening to this, well done to you.
Yeah, for sure. And then we talked a little bit about kind of dynasties. This is more of a tabletop. What, and because I know you haven't played a whole lot, what is your favorite detachment, or I guess what detachment are you running? Do you know?
Mm, I don't know if I could speak to that 100%.
I did. I think I was doing. Oh God, I don't have my phone updated. I was doing something a lot to do with the scarabs and the spider. Oh, I was doing the cryptech sort of stuff.
Yeah,
But it very specifically wants that cryptech keyword, and that was kind of becoming rough. So I was starting to work towards the I think the death cult that's with the flayed ones and stuff. But I literally, like I
got
said,
it.
I bought so much cool, and then
I
I was like, it
know.
doesn't work, and now
I
I'm like,
know the
I need to buy
feeling.
more models.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll like buy these units and thinking like, "Oh, these are going to be awesome." And then
Yeah.
you'll like actually look at their stats and you're like, "Oh, you're not that awesome, but you look really rad." So,
The
all about it.
stats weren't bad. The issue was is that it is very important to actually think about what kind of army you want to run before you start getting into models. And that's like,
Yeah.
I will preface too, I kind of touched on the combat patrol. Get a combat patrol box if you just want to try it out in some fast gameplay and you're not sure if you want to deep delve into Warhammer in like big point games. But the minute you hit big point games, I really suggest sitting down and looking at your armies, because again, I bought so many and then realized I had literal segments, mini units that worked with one another, but none of them worked together. And then when I sat
Yeah.
down and played on the table against someone that had done their homework, right, and they built the army to work as an actual like full army, oh, it was very clear right off rip, especially with like my detachment abilities or any kind of buffs or debuffs. I didn't
Yeah.
have any, or they just didn't work for a lot of the units I had left on the field.
Yep. Yep, especially with Necron, the leader units that you put on the field can have huge impacts to
Mm-hmm.
how the army works. Especially, and then with your stratagems, using different kinds of stratagems correctly.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention to that stuff, it can really change how your gameplay goes. It can be either work really well or just make your game like, oh wow, I'm getting completely demolished.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then as we wrap up, what we gave them a lot of information, right? But I do want to ask one more question. What is the coolest piece of Necron content in your opinion, be it a cinematic, maybe a 40K in 40 minutes, a page out of White Dwarf or the Codex or a Black Library, just something really worthwhile that you suggest people to go look at?
If you guys haven't seen it yet, go on to Warhammer Plus and watch the set of shorts that it has. I can't recall what the name is off memory, but
Right.
it's where it follows a salamander space
Yep.
marine, a battle sister, and then they are on a planet that is being assaulted by Necrons, and you really get a view into what like a Necron's mind is like. And it has some incredible fight scenes in it.
Oh yeah.
It's just awesome. It'll really kind of give you both the Necron impact and story
Mm-hmm.
while giving you some really good like eye candy of fighting and violence and whatnot. Plus, you get a sister battle in it, which is always
Right. I that's funny you mentioned that because I was gonna say the same one. Watching that
fun.
cinematic,
Perfect.
and I'm a big sucker for snipers, and it follows
Yes.
a death
Mm-hmm.
mark. Oh my
That
god.
death mark is so cool.
He is so cool. And
Yep.
I love that you get to see not a brain dead Necron when you follow his story. You do see kind of a little bit of a do I question it sort of situation. And it was really cool. Honestly, that cinematic is 100% what honed me in on finally getting Necrons. I remember being
Yep.
mesmerized and being like, oh, that's my faction.
Yep. And then to see the leader guy, I think he's like a spider like dude,
Yeah.
and how like unempathetic he is
He's
to
a
like everything around him.
He's a Scorptech model that you can play. I actually just recently picked him up. He can be like your
Yeah.
leader for either
Is that
just
the one where his like foot is going through
I think so.
like Militarum guy?
I think so. He's got like his hands are kind of like flayed ones, but I think he can be paired with them or the Scorptech destroyers. I'm very excited to paint him up and have him go. Like that was one of the last pieces I bought recently to fix my unit. But yeah, it follows him and they are fucking dope and they are scary.
So cool. So cool. But yes, if you guys have not watched it, go watch that. It's incredible.
And with that, I think that it wraps it up. Donnie and I would like to thank you from the darkest depths of the Grimdark universe for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yep. Bye, guys.